Good evening, dear viewers, and welcome to the News Bulletin at 8, brought to you by our number one news provider, Eswatini TV. I am Nondumiso Vilagada alongside Namakabiso Nkambule. Let's take a look at our news-making headlines. His Majesty King Mswati III says bilateral relations between the Kingdom of Eswatini and the Republic of Zimbabwe and France should be further developed and strengthened in order to develop many sectors of the economy. The Prime Minister encourages women to register for the national elections and also vote for other women. The court has found Mduduzi Bacete, Mabuza and Mtandeni Dube guilty. The news in detail. His Majesty King Mswati III says strengthening bilateral relations between Eswatini and the Republic of Zimbabwe will help enhance the development of the economies of both countries as they are still developing.
The Republic of Zimbabwe has appointed His Excellency Dr. Victor Matemadanda to be the ambassador designate in the Kingdom of Eswatini. He arrived at Lozita Palace to present his letters of credence to His Majesty King Mswati III. The Kingdom of Eswatini and the Republic of Zimbabwe have long-standing relations. The relations are deeply rooted in shared past, cultural bonds and familial ties. The bilateral relations were witnessed even when His Majesty King Mswati III was in Zimbabwe recently, whereby the King and Ingwenyama and the President of Zimbabwe had bilateral talks and discussed matters of mutual cooperation.
Your Majesty, may I please present Ambassador Designate from the Republic of Zimbabwe. Your Majesty, please.
The Republic of Zimbabwe Ambassador Designate His Excellency Dr. Victor Matemadanda has promised to further enhance the bilateral relations between the two countries during his time of office.
Your Majesty's participation at the 6th edition of the Transform Africa Summit held in Victoria Falls was also a welcome gesture and further demonstrated the excellent relations that exist between our two countries. Your Majesty's visit to Zimbabwe created an opportunity to reinvigorate relations in agriculture, tourism, and trade.
His Majesty King Mswati III, receiving the letters of credence, said both countries, as they are still developing, they have to work together, share ideas, and cooperate towards developing their economies.
So the summit came at the right time, just to give us an understanding of how to set up all this infrastructure, because, of course, the infrastructure has to be there. And I think during our discussions, we came up with a lot of positive results to see how our countries can establish very strong digital work indeed. So we are looking forward that we should now work together to see how we implement all these things. And the good thing is that some of this infrastructure are already existing in other corners of the world, which means that we do not have to invent new wheels. We can duplicate from all the success stories of around the world.
The close relations between the two countries help both member states to continue exchanging notes and share strategies on developing the lives of the people.
And again, His Majesty King Mswati III says the bilateral relations between the Kingdom of Eswatini and France will assist the kingdom to develop in many sectors. His Majesty was speaking when receiving letters of credence from the Ambassador of France at Lozita Palace.
The ambassador designate of The ambassador-designate of France, His Excellency Jan-Piet Diaw, arrived at Lozita Palace to present his letter of credence to His Majesty King Mswati III. France is in the Western Europe and is a member of the European Union. Bilateral relations between the Kingdom of Eswatini and France are good and have been existing for some years. France contributes significantly in Eswatini through the European Development Fund (EDF), as well as the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. France ambassador-designate His Excellency Jan-Piet Diaw says France has close relations with the continent of Africa as the country assists the continent in developing.
The French government will indeed host at the end of this month, in June 2023, a summit for a new global financing pact as a key step in reforming international aligned from the throne agenda as much as the African country. Your Majesty may be assured on Russian attack of inflation, increasing supply chain instability.
Receiving the letters of credence from the ambassador, His Majesty King Mswati III said.
Dear viewers, we apologize for the technical glitches. We'll definitely come back to the story. The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini encourages women to register for the national elections and also vote for other women. The Prime Minister was speaking shortly after registering for the elections at Mangwaneni Primary School in Babane.
By the end of business on Wednesday, there were 276,956 people who had registered for the national elections. Today, the Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini was among Emaswati who registered for the elections. The Prime Minister registered at Mangwaneni Primary School, where he was assisted by EPC officials. Shortly after registering, the Prime Minister encouraged women to register for the elections and also vote for other women as well.
Kungabukwa ema lifestyle ukuthi lona uyahlabela so yamvotela, lona bekadlala ibhola so yamvotela, noma ngumfundisi wesonto leliside angisho singabavoteli labo, but akungabi ngiloko kuphela lokudonsako kulomuntu, akube nje likhono lakhe seliphelele. Esikhatsini lesiningi nakuvotwa la ukhanza ukuthi bomake bayashota, sekukhulunywa kanenge lokuthi akuvotelwe bomake phela, akuvotelwe bomake. Bomake kuthi baze babe khona eParliament kufuna sibavotele, ngeke babe khona singakabavoteli. Seyendiwe imetamo yokuthi kumbe kwetanywe kusakwengetwe 4, but labo bantu labo bancane kakhulu. Asithembane thina nabo omake bethembane ukuthi ngiyavotela make utawusebenza.
According to the Wednesday statistics, women were still leading as there were 148,042 registered women. Men stood at 128,914. For Eswatini TV News, I am LinkedIn Kule with Dlamini in Babane.
The Deputy Prime Minister Themba Masuku has assured young people of Eswatini's government that it commits herself towards protecting and taking care of their needs. Masuku says the country has put together laws that seek to ensure that the environment is safe for them to grow and become better future leaders. The Deputy Prime Minister was speaking during the official launch of the Month of the Child held in Matsapa.
The month of June is a month where government and civil society take stock of the things that have been done to protect the rights of children. Speaking during the launch of the Month of the Child in Eswatini, the Deputy Prime Minister Themba Masuku says parents should try to plan in advance for their children.
Umntwana ufuna ukuthi umhlelele naDawuda emhlabeni ngoba lo sikwethwalako sesiphike ekhombana emehlweni ukuthi uhulumende akwakwenti lokho bana akwakwenti lokho kukhona la silahlekelana khona ekuhleleni sihlelele kuba nebantwana abantwana anikalahleki ni yavikelwa imithetho sesiyibekile nasenivile ukuthi kunemithetho siyabekisa nje kunemithetho lengangingcenye yako nawakhiwa umthetho wa 2012 webantwana lo mthetho lo ukhulumisa into letinenge kepha nangake ngiye esikolweni Minister Education udawuvana la ukhona khona ngiyatibuta ukuthi kukhona yini iperiod yokufundisa lemithetho levikele abantwana.
The Minister for Education, Lady Howard, says young people should communicate with their parents.
We need to talk and find each other so that we can support each other.
The UNICEF representative in Eswatini, Amina Mohammed, says Eswatini has all the necessary tools that speaks to children protection and welfare. The Deputy Prime Minister allowed a pupil, Nkambule Tembelihle, to read his speech for the launch. For Eswatini TV News, Sondomlangeni, Themba Shabangu, Matsapa.
Trade unions and security forces often have a misunderstanding when it comes to implementing law, especially during organization and collective bargaining meetings for unions. This was one of the findings of the committee, which was investigating government's alleged interference with the workers' rights during these meetings and protest by using brutal force during arrests and detentions. The report was submitted by the chairperson David Khumalo to the Minister of Labour Phila Buthelezi at Royal Villas at Eswatini, and it was initiated by the International Labour Organization in 2018.
The minister detailed some of the findings of the report recommended by the International Labour Organization.
It was to determine the justification for the action, if any, taken by the police pursuant to the international actions embarked upon by Tukoswa, Atuso and Smart, as mentioned by ITUC in their letter dated 20th September 2018. Another task for this investigation committee was to interview witnesses, to conduct site inspections, and examine any documentary, electronic, and other forms of evidence that may have been available to prove or dispel any elements of violence and or intimidation incidental to the industrial actions mentioned by ITUC in its letter.
The chairperson of the committee, David Khumalo, says although the security forces, especially the police, always follow the law during the workers' meetings and protests, there is sometimes a slight misunderstanding during its implementation.
Likomiti lelitholile kube kuthi kwanyalo kusenenkinga ukuthi lo mthetho nase uimplementwa la nase uimplementwa uma sesihlangene mhlambe sithi 70 lokufaka ekhathi nemaphoyisa ukuthi mhlambe anenzima la idlalako kube sekuba nemisunderstanding kukhona la ukhanda ukuthi lo mthetho ubese sowephuka khona.
Tukoswa's Secretary General Mduduzi Gina says they hope the findings and recommendations of the report will pave a way forward for government and workers' unions to work together peacefully in addressing workers' challenges. The minister says the report is not yet available to the public as it will first be tabled at the International Labour Organization. For Eswatini TV News, Nelson.
Minister of Labour and Social Security Philip Telezi says the Workmen's Compensation Amendment Bill of 2022 will not cover compensation of people injured before passing the legislation. This follows questions from senators about the compensation of soldiers who were injured during the civil unrest in Eswatini in 2021. This question and many others were posed during a workshop for senators on the bill on Thursday morning.
During the workshop, senators expressed satisfaction that soldiers will now be compensated in the event they are injured in the line of duty. They also had questions.
Specifically khuluma ngabo khona angiboni ukuthi ngabiphelele lena angiboni ngiva la mlonyeni nakhulunye nguphi specifically la khulunywa ukuthi ngoba induna ekusenzile lokho na present ukhuluma ngalo la khuluma ngala masoja khona specifically
njengalokhu lo mthetho ubalulekile nje kangaka ingabe ma-regulations wona atawuvela nini
funa ke ukuthi buta ukuthi ngabe nakukhulunywa ngetisebenti kukhulunywa ngebantu abakanjani ngifuna kubuta nje ngabe ngicasha umfana wami wetinkomo so uthi uyangena esibayeni uyawusenga ukhahlelwa ngile nkomo noma ngivumelekeni kuminshora naye ukuthi uchaphela ngobe sisebenzi noma kube lo ngigadzako logadze egedeni ufuna ligede lami naba sebamlimata bozidlane ngiyavumeleka ukuthi ngemishorishe noma ababalwa labo.
Minister of Labour and Social Security Philip Telezi responded.
Now ukhipha lo wakhona ngemfunzo letimbunga usi a member of the Umbutho Swaziland Defence Force. Shosi siyawakhipha emasotsha kulaba ngafanele incembeteleka. Kulo mthetho na usenza incembetelo umthetho uvele uqale kusuka la ubusiswa khona uye embili ngoba na ungathi emuva ungenteka sibayepeni yesibili yemhlaba.
Buthelezi said house helpers, groundsmen and headsmen are some of the people who will not be compensated under this legislation because their wages are too low. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela, Parliament.
Dear viewers, at this point we will go back to our story that had technical glitches, and again we are terribly sorry for that. His Majesty King Mswati III says the bilateral relations between the Kingdom of Eswatini and France will assist the kingdom to develop in many sectors. His Majesty was speaking when receiving letters of credence from the Ambassador of France at Lozita Palace.
The ambassador-designate of France, His Excellency Jan-Pierre Diao, arrived at Lozita Palace to present his letter of credence to His Majesty King Mswati III. France is in the Western Europe and is a member of the European Union. Bilateral relations between the Kingdom of Eswatini and France are good and have been existing for some years. France contributes significantly in Eswatini through the European Development Fund, EDF, as well as the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. France Ambassador-designate His Excellency Jan-Pierre Diao says France has close relations with the continent of Africa as the country assists the continent in developing.
The French government will indeed host at the end of this month, in June 2023, a summit for a new global financing pact as a key step in reforming the international financial architecture, enabling some governments, financial institutions, international organizations, private stakeholders, and civil society to hold talks and develop a common response to the main challenge of your century. Your Majesty has underlined in his last speech from the throne the utmost importance of the 2030 agenda, as much as the African Union Agenda 2063. Your Majesty may be assured of my President's determination to contribute fully to the same objectives. And today, more than ever, as the consequences of COVID-19 and Russian attack of Ukraine continue to be felt everywhere with growing inflation, increasing supply chain instability, resulting in food and energy insecurity.
Receiving the letters of credence from the ambassador, His Majesty King Mswati III said the kingdom is looking forward that the existing relations be further strengthened in many aspects.
We are looking forward that now, with the appointment of yourself as the new ambassador, we will be able to strengthen the good cooperation between our two countries. We take this opportunity to be grateful of the support which France continues to display, especially in Africa, that you've had some connections with Africa from many, many years, but France continues to play a very important role to see all the aspirations of Africa that are actually met with all the necessary requirements that is needed. We have seen this when your country has invited Africa, where we have some discussion with Africa and France summit together, where the European Union and also Africa. So all of these are the signs that France is very keen to be a very strong partner within Africa, and we are very grateful of this.
France is a long-standing partner of the African Development Bank Group and actively supports development in Africa. On the news, I'm Polile Mazia at Lozita Palace.
The Eswatini Communications Commission has donated 6 giant photocopying machines and Wi-Fi hotspot to the Ministry of Tinkundla Administration and Development. Speaking during the official handover at Lobamba in Nkundla, the Minister, David Ngampalala, says the equipment will be used in the Tinkundla centers, aiding in the digitization and ensuring easy access to services for all eMaswati.
Naku lokuthiwa multifunctional devices lokuma printer kuphindze kube makhopya lokusithupha.
The Chief Executive Officer says they made the donation of the multifunctional photocopying devices and Wi-Fi hotspot because they have a mandate to ensure universal access to technology and networking. The Minister of Tinkundla Administration and Development, David Ngampalala, has urged the youth to use the services in the Tinkundla centers as it is also meant for their benefit.
Kube hulumende noma nganganana fake 20 million nembala tonke tinkundla lama services lesikhuluma ngawo abengaba khona.
Lukongolweni Member of Parliament Ndethelelo Magongo expressed his appreciation to the Commission for ensuring digital services are accessed in the Tinkundla centers.
We have been singing about ukuthi uhulumende uyakubantu. So ke mase sikhuluma ngaloko manje sesikhuluma ngento leyentekako lephathekako.
The Eswatini Communications Commission has donated equipment to 25 Tinkundla centers. For Eswatini TV News, Nelson Langamandla, Mbongwa Dube Lobamba.
The Minister for Public Works and Transport, Ndlahlaza Ndwandwe, says awareness is the first step towards addressing the local and global road safety challenge. The minister says the age group mostly affected are children between the ages of 5 to 9 years, as a road accident are a #1 killer of these children. The minister was speaking during the prize presentation event where he was represented by the Road Safety Council's chairperson, Dr. Fortunate Shabalala.
In a bid to curb road accidents in the country, the Eswatini Communications Commission launched the letter writing competition earlier this year, where pupils were required to articulate both in Siswati and English how they could minimize road accidents. The Minister for Public Works and Transport, represented by Road Safety Council Chairperson Dr. Fortunate Shabalala, says this writing contest has helped open a channel for the ministry to receive insights from the most vulnerable group on the road, children and young people.
Our statistics in the country when it comes to road traffic accidents, it shows that children between the ages of 5 to 14 years, the leading cause of death in that age group are road traffic accidents.
The Eswatini Communications Commission's Chief Mvilawempi Dlamini says the commission is working towards a safe space for people, especially online.
As the cybersecurity agency in Eswatini, the commission is facilitating and operationalizing the Computer Crime and Cybercrime Act of 2022 and the National Cybersecurity Strategy of Eswatini 2020 to 2025. One of the objectives is to ensure that the Kingdom of Eswatini has effective and adequate legal frameworks to deal with child online protections.
The winner for the Siswati letter is Sisekelo Masilela from Aina Mhlabelo High School. Other winners were Piwa Yinkosi Matebula from Egutvaleni High School, Owethu Mavuso from Mafuteni Primary, Sewelile Mamba from St. Mark's, Shango Mohammed from Egwetembeni Special School, and Meloguhle also from Egwetembeni Special School. For Eswatini TV News Sondomlangeni, Temba Shabangu, Matapa.
The court has found Mduduzi Bacete Mabuza and Mthandeni Dube guilty. They will now appear for mitigation before being sentenced. The matter is before Judge Mamsi Dlamini.
The court has found Mduduzi Bacete Mabuza and Mthandeni Dube guilty of contravening the Suppression of Terrorism Act and murder. The court says there is no doubt that Mabuza and Dube said they would fight and free Eswatini. The court says the question is how would they do this? It also says it is clear that Mabuza called for a system where the king has no political powers and wanted others to subscribe to this idea. The court further says Dube encouraged people to fill the streets and have no fear. In the murder charges, the court says it is not in dispute that the two people who died were part of protesters at Ngwalini. The court says Mabuza knew that there would be a possibility of violence following his statements, and this can be deduced from his evidence. The court also says Mabuza touched on this when he testified about violence at Tabani Nkomonye's memorial service. The court then found them guilty of terrorism and 2 counts of murder. The court acquitted Mabuza in the charge of contravening COVID-19 regulations. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela with Muzim Konda, High Court.
Dear viewers, now take a look at our financial updates. Welcome back. You're still watching Eswatini TV. Now, sports news tonight. The Minister for Sports, Harris Bulunga, has come out to support the national team as they will engage in the COSAFA Cup 2023. Bulunga says with better preparations, he believes the team can be able to finally come back with a trophy that they have failed to win over the years.
Ever since they started competing for the COSAFA Cup, they have failed to reach the finals of the regional competition, with the highest position being that. The Minister for Sports, Harris Bulunga, who coached the national team to the bronze medal in the same tournament, says he believes the national team can win the cup, but they will have to work extra hard and work smart in using the available resources. Bulunga says he doesn't believe there is bad luck for the national team when it comes to this tournament.
Angicabangi lokuthi kuyijinx noma mhlambe kunesinyama leside lokuthi singayiwini iCOSAFA. Idzinga nje iplanning. Nami ngingathi izamela njengoba usho nje agcine maybe sidlula kuma-semi-finals abuya ne-bronze, and I think nale technical team lekhona sayikayithola i-bronze. Lengicabanga ukuthi sebanayo le experience, yeke ukuthi lokuye kusilimade ngokuthi maybe labadlali bethu sikhanze ukuthi asiba-rotate kahle. Sithi siyofika le kuma-semi-final khanze ukuthi mhlawumbe sekunabo fatigue ngoba labadlali badlala ema-games ukhanze ukuthi mhlawumbe wecisa ilanga linye phinde soyadlala. So nabanga-manager kahle lama-resources lebanawo in terms of badlali phinde siceceshe kahle. Ngibelieve ukuthi kule experience sesinayo ngoba cishe sinikisa i-team leseyiye kabili noma kathathu solosithembe yona. Singagcina sibuyile nayo le ndzebe.
In table tennis news, the president of the Table Tennis Association, Pesizulu, who got invited to South Africa during the Table Tennis World Cup, says he came back with lots of experience and learned a lot of what must be done to promote the sport in the country. Zulu, who got a chance to speak with China, who won the whole tournament, says what they told him was that for them to be at the top, they started at the bottom with kids. Zulu says that's what they are looking at doing, as well as it seems to be working well for China. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports News, I am Patizwe Msibi. Babane.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin tonight. Up next is the weather forecast for selected towns. Good night, Eswatini.